Hey, good morning, everyone. Last week, I started off by telling you I wanted you to be thinking about Lent, specifically what you want your Lent to be like this year. It's just around the corner. It starts this week with Ash Wednesday. And as you know, Lent is usually a time when we give things up or take on new practices so we can spend more time with God and allow Him to prepare our hearts for Easter. But I know a lot of us feel like this whole year has been one long Lent. 2020 has been all about giving things up and going without. So maybe that's not what your soul craves here in 2021, and that's okay. But I can guarantee you your soul does crave to grow closer to God. So maybe for you this year, Lent is not so much about giving up as it is about reaching out. Like, what if you took our church directory and over the 40 days of Lent, you chose a different person each day to give a call or send a card? You don't even have to know them well. Just call and say, hey, just want you to know I'm thinking about you and praying for you. Or drop a line and say, hey, we both go to St. Anne's and I really look forward to knowing you better when things are a little more back to normal. For some, it'll just be a quick voicemail. With others, you might talk for a while, but God will be there in the middle of all those relationships. It's a great way to grow closer to God and to one another. Or, okay, maybe instead of giving up or reaching out, maybe for you this Lent, it's about digging in. You want to know God better? Well, the best way to do that is to be in His Word on a regular basis. And plenty of folks can read the Bible all on their own, but I discovered long ago it's far better when we treat Bible study as a team sport. The Bible comes alive when we dig into it together. And the way we do that around here these days is our Wednesday night Bible stories for grown-ups on Zoom. It's just us, people like you and me. We get together and we read the Bible one story at a time. Sometimes we break up into small groups and sometimes we don't. Sometimes I lead, sometimes it's others. But you don't have to know anything special to attend. You don't have to study ahead. You can start with us anytime. So if this Lent you feel like digging in, we'll be there with you. But if your Lent this year is not about giving up or reaching out or digging in, maybe it's simply about letting go. Every year on this day, the last Sunday before Lent, we get the story that we just heard a moment ago, the story of the Transfiguration. In Mark's Gospel, it's right smack in the middle. There's the baptism of Jesus at the beginning, there's His resurrection at the end, and in the middle, boom, the Transfiguration. This story is the hinge point. It's the halftime. It's the moment where the glory of God pours forth from Jesus' body, and it becomes unmistakably clear that this is no ordinary man. He is the Son of God. And Mark says Jesus was radiant. The Greek word that he uses here is the word they used to use to describe the blinding light that shines off of highly polished brass or glistening steel. You ever been sitting in a restaurant near a window on a hot Tifton summer afternoon and the blinding glare from a car window or mirror just won't get out of your eyes? It was like that, but times a million. And in the midst of all that radiance, Peter looks around and says, yes, 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 let's do this forever. Peter was a guy who always thought he knew what was needed. He had firm ideas in his head about how things should work, about how Jesus should act, about how the world should be. So when he saw all that glory shining all around, he wanted to hang on to that forever. But then out of nowhere, God Himself shows up in the form of a cloud. He hadn't done that since way back in the Old Testament. He was going old school on this. And then His voice booms forth, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to Him." And then everything goes quiet. Listen to Him. Why was that so important? Why was it so important at this moment the hinge point, the halftime, for God to show up in such a mighty way and say, y'all, this is my boy, you better listen up. Because from this point on, Jesus had his face set toward Jerusalem. From this point on, Jesus was headed to the cross. From this point on, Jesus would talk openly about letting go, about being crucified, about dying. And no one ever wants to hear about that. It is the great paradox of our faith that resurrection comes only through crucifixion, that eternal life comes only through death, that gaining all comes only through letting go. This life of ours, the Christian life, it's not about power. It's not about glory. It's not about acquisition or being right or holding on or keeping control. It really is over and over about dying to ourselves and rising to God's mercy. It's about letting go. If you don't believe me, look at God's Son and listen to him. So this Lent, I don't know exactly what your heart needs to grow closer to God. Maybe it is giving something up, or maybe it is reaching out to others, or maybe it is digging into the Bible or your prayers or some other form of devotion. Or maybe, after a year of so much frustration and wishing we could control things that we just can't, maybe for you this Lent is simply about looking within yourself and finding that one thing, just one thing, a frustration, a grudge, a resentment, a right, a wrong, a worry, a fear, just one thing. And for 40 days, starting this Wednesday, waking up, getting on your knees and saying, Lord, I put this in your hands. I nail this to your cross. Lord, I let this go. I let this die so that your mercy and your new life can rise within me. The Transfiguration is like a preview of things to come. It's the tiny movie trailer to the grand cinema that is Easter morning. Y'all, Easter is coming. But to get there, we got to take up our cross and walk the long way with Jesus and let ourselves go. So y'all come back this Wednesday at 6 p.m. And come on, let's make that journey together.